let's shift things over to the black and gold. There are some reports, or I guess I should say basically one report, coming out of the Steel City, that would be Pittsburgh, that the Steelers are checking in on Chris Olave and his availability via trade. Adam Crowley is a host on 93.7 The Fan up in Pittsburgh, and he sent that tweet out. And right now, the Saints are in a position that they have not been in 2 decades. You're at the bottom of a rebuild. You've got a brand new coach. You've drafted a quarterback. And you don't really have high expectations for this coming season. And while the Saints would not tell you that in a press conference, I do believe that many realize that, okay? And so you're now in a position that you have not been in a long time to do some things that you have not done, really this regime has not done. And that started a little bit last year when you traded Marshawn Lattimore, and I thought that was absolutely the right thing to do. Aging corner, but an asset you can recoup something with. And they were able to score a draft pick for him, and I was all for that. And I still believe that you should be listening to opportunities to increase your assets to get younger and cheaper. That's the chorus that we sing all the time when we're talking about the Saints. Got to get younger and cheaper. And so should the Saints trade Chris Olave essentially for draft picks? And as is always the case when you talk about trades, like the answer lies in what the return is. If you tell me that you can recoup 2 second-round picks for Chris Olave, well, yeah, I'm listening. I'm all ears. You tell me, yeah, we'll give you a 6th for him, like, wait a second. And that's very likely what the conversation kind of starts with, right? So my answer to this is, barring some completely unforeseen offer from Pittsburgh, which that organization is not really in the business of making unfounded moves. It's a pretty solid organization. No, you don't trade Chris Olave. Chris Olave is 24 years old, about to play his year 25 season. When he's healthy, Chris Olave has put together back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving years with suboptimal quarterback play. You're talking about the Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton year and half a Derek Carr. So I'm not in a hurry to move a 25-year-old, 1,000-yard receiver who's right now on a rookie deal, who's not going to break the bank when it comes time to sign a contract extension. The Saints are bad at wide receiver relative to the rest of the league. They just are. You look at the rest of the league and you stack Chris Olave as a 1, Rashid Shaheed is a 2, older, slower Rashid Shaheed, a.k.a. Brandon Hooks, is a 3, and then whatever else is beyond that. Like, that's relative to the rest of the NFL, that's bad. I'm not in a hurry to move the best piece of the bad position to go get draft picks. I'm all for draft picks. I like draft picks. Mickey Loomis doesn't use enough draft picks. We all know this. But Olave is one of the guys you can build around. I talk about this all the time when I'm talking about Saints players. Is he going to be on the next really good Saints team? And Chris Olave very much could. DeMario Davis is not. In my opinion, Alvin Kamara is not. Tyrann Mathieu is not. But some pieces like Eric McCoy, like Taliesin Fuaga, like Chris Olave, like Brian Brzee, those guys can be. Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry. And Olave is part of that mix. Hopefully Tyler Shook's on that team. But I'm not in a hurry to just sell off all the assets. This is not a Florida Marlins 1998 fire sale here. This is, okay, I've got an aging asset, not going to be worth it for me, move him. Chris Olave is a good player. Now, you could convince me that the Saints are very, very concerned about his health, that he's expressed to them that there may be some issues. Like, if that's the case, and there are things that I don't know that are not public knowledge, well, that changes the conversation, but I don't have that information. If I just go off of the production on the field and the statistics, Chris Olave is a guy I'd like to stick around for 4 or 5 more years. I don't feel that way about some of those aging players that I just rattled off. So, while I'm willing to listen to every offer at this point, the Saints are in a position, if anybody makes a phone call that is willing to give draft picks and more availability to young, cheap players, the Saints have to pick up the phone. But if it's, I really like Chris Olave to come be our number 2 wide receiver, here's a 6th rounder next year, click. That's no good for me. That's a guy that could be in the future plans for the next good Saints team. We do have to worry about the injury stuff, but right now it appears he's healthy and good to go. So I'm not in a hurry to move on from him. You need some guys at wide receiver. You're probably going to go into free agency for one or two more. Probably going to need to draft one next year. And I don't think Chris Olave is necessarily an NFL one. He doesn't scream number one receiver. He is a very, very productive NFL wide receiver that is an above average two. He's one of those guys. He's a below average one, above average two. You'd like to plug in another guy with him, but I'm not in a hurry to part with him just because the Saints are in a rebuild and it's a fire sale. That's not the case in New Orleans right now. So no pressing news at this point, just an internet rumor that has buzzed up. And again, listen, but I'm going to need significant return if I'm going to part with a 24, 25-year-old wide receiver who is shown he's an 1,000-yard guy. My 2 cents on Chris Olave with the Saints. Jordan Kitchens, you got your black and gold hat on. The Steelers pick up the phone and say, "Hey, we'll give you a third rounder for Chris Olave." How you feel about that?
I might fart on the phone.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, the problem I have with Hunt is that the position's already weak. All right.
Yes,
so
it's weak.
You remove Olave, you're looking at Rashid Shaheed, who does have injury history.
He does.
Brandon Cooks,
who's old as dirt.
Bub Carrington. Yeah, that doesn't really scream, about even if we are in a rebuild, you do have two young quarterbacks that you kind of want to give them something to work with. Yeah. So you remove your best piece receiver wise, that's a huge problem. So then I'd say this. You just picked up his 5th-year option. So why move him if you picked up his 5th-year option? That means you kind of you see a future with him. You should have just traded him, but not pick that up and just got rid of him at that point.
I'm with you. I think that's a guy you got to build around. Beck, you have any thoughts on a Chris Olave departure if you're going to get some draft picks for it?
No, it's not worth what you're going to get back for him. He provides. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not talking about keeping Chris Olave because we think the Saints have a chance of being a playoff team within the next 2 years. But at the same time, you gotta keep guys like Chris Olave on the team because he's one that is going to be important. Like the fans like him. Like I'm not trying to say they're trying to sell tickets, but at the same time, like you can't just make a team devoid of talent, and the return is just not worth what you're going to get. What you're going to get in return for him is not worth it, and you really would have no really wide receiver one if you did trade him. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I'll quote Charles Hannegriff, our colleague here from Live at Lunch, who often uses this metaphor when talking about sports. I think it's Apollo 13 is the movie. It says, what do we got on the spaceship that's good? Because there's some kind of blow up and they're trying to get home. Well, what do we got that does work?
Yeah.
There's not a lot on the Saints spaceship that works. Olave is one of the things that works. Yeah. So let's keep that there and try to build on it is kind of my 2 cents on the issue. So no thank you to the Steelers on Chris Olave. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.